ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is in reference to the domestic battery law that is on the books. Right now, the domestic battery charges are, it's a Class B person misdemeanor, a Class A person misdemeanor for a second offense within a 5-year period, and then a non-grid felony for a third or subsequent offense within a 5-year period. Then it's an aggravated domestic battery with a severity level 7 personal felony. What this bill that I'm introducing is RS 2928. And what this bill does is it makes the third offense a severity level 7 felony with a 90-day mandatory sentence, and it puts it on the grid.
Very good. Committee. Yep, absolutely. Committee, any objection to that introduction? Seeing none, we'll get it introduced. Thank you. All right, we are going to move right into our hearing on House Bill 2583, and we will ask Natalie to give us an overview. And while she's doing that, I'd like to welcome our speaker who's joining us today. I'm sure you guys saw that. I'm grateful to have him in here. He and I happen to be the co-sponsors of House Bill 2583. So, Natalie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2583 increases the criminal penalty for harming or killing certain dogs and horses, and it requires restitution for those offenses to contain certain expenses. Section 1 amends KSA 216416. That's the crime of inflicting harm, disability, or death to a police dog, arson dog, assistance dog, game warden dog, or search and rescue dog. The crime is first admitted to include police horses, and there's a definition of police horses that would be used for the section. The current penalty for violation of this offense is a non-grid, non-person felony. The sentence is not less than 30 days or more than 1 year's imprisonment, and a fine of not less than $500 and not more than $5,000. The person is also required to have a psychological evaluation prepared to assist the court in determining conditions of probation, and the person is also required to complete an anger management program. That penalty will remain the same as it is in current law for harm that does not result in disability or death to the animal. But for harm that does result in disability or death to the animal, the penalty would be a severity level 4 non-person felony. Harm that results in disability or death to the animal during the commission of either attempting to flee or elude a police officer, interference with law enforcement, or escape or aggravated escape from custody would be raised to a severity level 3 non-person felony. In addition to any sentence provided in the sentencing grid, there would be a mandatory minimum of 90 days imprisonment imposed and a mandatory minimum fine of $10,000. The person would also be subject to that psychological evaluation and completion of the anger management course that's the same for when the harm does not result in disability or death. Section 2 amends KSA 216604. That's the statute that provides for restitution. This section is amended to provide that for a violation of that crime, restitution will include the cost of veterinary medical treatment, reasonable funeral and burial expenses, and replacement of the animal. And I can take any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Natalie. Committee, questions for Natalie? All right. Seeing none, thank you very much, Natalie. Let's get into our proponents. I believe we have Sheriff Jeff Easter from Sedgwick County on WebEx with us. Sheriff Easter.
Well, good afternoon, Chair and Committee. Sorry I couldn't join you personally. We appreciate Representative Hawkins and Representative Owens in introducing this bill. I'm representing today the Kansas Sheriff's Association, the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police. As Natalie stated, the change in the bill is the new section C, specifically talking about the disability or the death of a canine. We believe that raising the level of a non-person felony to a 3 is extremely acceptable due to the fact that the canines are our partners. Yes, they are tools, but they are also tools that help protect us from the violent criminals that we face every day. And so in the last 7 years, just here in our area, we have had 2 canines killed in the line of duty, one of which was a WPD canine rooster who was shot and killed during an incident. And then the other, which happened in October, was our canine Bane, who was beaten to death. Deputy Tyler Brooks, I believe, is going to give testimony, so I won't go into that incident very much. However, those aren't the only canines that have been disabled or killed in the state of Kansas. And every time that we have one over the past several years, it does cause angst amongst law enforcement that the punishment doesn't seem to fit the crime. And so this bill, we believe that the punishment will fit the crime, and including the raising of the restitution to $10,000. To replace one dog currently right now is $10,000, let alone the funeral expenses, the vet bills, those type of things. So with that, we appreciate the fact that you have given us the time today. And if you have any questions, I will stand for questions at whatever time you decide is necessary.
Thank you, Sheriff. We'll go ahead and move on with our conferees. Well, hold on a sec. You good? All right. We'll come right back to you. Do you have time to stay online with the sheriff?
Absolutely, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Hang out with us. We'll get through our proponents and then we'll go to questions. We'd now like to welcome Sergeant Ben Yonker, Kansas State Lodge Fraternal Order of Police. Sergeant, thanks for joining us. And this is Oz?
This is Oz.
Fantastic. Thanks for bringing him.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Speaker Hawkins, and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify in support of House Bill 2583. I am Sergeant Ben Jonker. I've been with the Wichita Police Department for 23 years and the K-9 Unit Supervisor for the past 9 years. This is my partner Oz, and my testimony today is offered as a member of the Kansas State Lodge Fraternal Order of Police. This new bill addresses 2 major factors that were not addressed with the old law. First, it greatly increases the severity of the crime for injuring or killing police service animals, and it also allows departments the ability to try to recoup some of the financial burdens of losing a dog in the line of duty. You guys have my written testimony. I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about 2 special dogs to me. The first was Canine Rooster, and his end of watch was March 18th of 2017. He was the partner to Officer Daniel Gum. They responded on that day to a felony domestic violence incident where an individual had threatened family members with a firearm. Officer Gum responded with several other officers, and the individual came outside. He tried to retreat back inside. Officer Gum deployed his dog, Rooster. Rooster apprehended the suspect on the porch, and the suspect produced a firearm and shooting and killing Rooster. Rooster was 7 when he was shot and killed, and he was the most experienced canine that the Wichita Police Department had at that time. Shortly after his death, myself and Officer Gum went to our vendor to purchase another canine, and we purchased Canine Bane. Bane was partners with Officer Gum for several years until Officer Gum passed away from cancer in November of 2022. Bane was a very strong dog, and I was getting a new handler at the time, so there is no way that a new handler could have handled Bane just because of the how strong Bane was. The Sedgwick County Sheriff's Department needed a dog at that time, and there wasn't a better handler that I thought that could handle him than Deputy Brooks. So we gave Bane to the Sheriff's Department. And then on November 16th, 2023, officers from the Wichita Police Department and the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Department responded to a call to apprehend a violent felon. This violent felon ran from officers and ran down into a drainage ditch or a tunnel underneath the ground. We deployed several canines in an attempt to apprehend this felon, and when it came to it, none of them were able to get the job done, so we called for Bane. Bane was able to apprehend the suspect. However, the suspect kicked Bane so hard that it fractured his liver, causing him to start to bleed internally, causing him to get weak, and then that there's evidence that the suspect then strangled the dog. Both of these dogs were very experienced and had thousands of hours of training and were irreplaceable to us. After Bane's death, the canine community, the citizens of Wichita and Sedgwick County, we were stunned to find out that the most that this suspect would get was a year in jail. It cost us between $8,000 and $10,000 to replace a dog, and that's buying a dog with 0 training. Once we're done with the training, they go through a 10 to 12 week training class. That's a basic canine training class. We have estimated that the cost to actually purchase a dog after that basic training class would probably be around $30,000 to $40,000 with basic training. Oz has been my partner for 5 years. We have thousands of hours of training, and you can't put a price on that amount of training. These dogs are a huge part of the agencies that they work for. I promise you, most of the officers on the Wichita Police Department probably know my dog's name better than they know my name. They find illegal drugs, search for missing people and bad guys, and are loved by the community. Oz and I spend hours each month speaking at schools and church groups and giving community presentations. Citizens in our community love our dogs. They help bond relationships between our community and the police department, and we owe it to these animals for stricter laws when people want to hurt them. Again, I appreciate you allowing Oz and I to come speak to you today, and I'm pleased to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Sergeant, and I'm grateful that you brought Oz with you. All right, committee will now be pleased to hear from Deputy Tyler Brooks of the Fraternal Order of Police as well. Deputy Brooks.
Hello. Thank you for having me today. Speaker Hawkins, Chairman Owens, and members of the committee. My name is Deputy Tyler Brooks, and my testimony today is as a member of the Kansas State Lodge Fraternal Order of Police. I've been a deputy with the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office since 2013, and in 2018, I was fortunate enough to be selected to be part of our K-9 unit. In 2022, I went through a long training process and became certified as a unit trainer, which gave me a whole new set of duties. These duties include training a very new dog, a green dog as we would call it, and then maintaining the dog teams in between the periods between certifications. I honestly could not imagine a better job than what I have right now. In November of 2022, I was without a canine partner at the time after recently retiring my previous dog, and I was given police service dog Bane. Bane came to me through the Wichita Police Department after they donated him to the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office after the passing of Officer Daniel Gum, which you heard about previously. Officer Daniel Gum was not only my friend, but he was also my mentor. So for me to be able to work with Dan's dog was extremely sentimental. It was very challenging due to how strong the dog was, and I really appreciated being able to do that. Both Dan and Bane taught me so much during my time with them, and I honestly would not be the same person that I am today without them. We as handlers spend more time with our canine partners than we do with our families. That's truly not an exaggeration. During our time with the dogs, we spend 8 to 10 hours a day with them. During the basic school, we are working with them constantly for up to 12 weeks, sometimes longer, just to get them to the point where they can be serviceable as a law enforcement tool. You can see how spending this amount of time with them, they become much more than just a tool to us. And I can tell you that Bane was much more than just a tool to me. Bane meant more to me on a personal level as well. First off, because he was Dan's dog to begin with. Second, because this dog actually helped my son break his fear of dogs. It's kind of funny to me that this very large dog who frequently broke things and knocked everything over during a training session would be the one that would break my 7-year-old autistic son of his crippling fear of dogs. And that's evident every day now because when I bring my new partner home, my son is no longer afraid to walk past the kennel. Bane did so much for us and for the community. Police dogs are amazing animals, and they serve our law enforcement departments as invaluable resources. They detect crimes, locate people, and save lives. I have personally been involved in several instances when the deployment of a police dog may very well have saved a life. On one such instance, I was working with Bane in the spring of 2023. An armed suspect was surrounded and stated he was going to force us to shoot him in order to take him into custody. Bain apprehended and dragged the man away from the weapon, ending the need for lethal force to be used by officers. Many times we deal with people who cannot rationally think in the moment due to crisis they are experiencing. Often these suspects attempt to force us to end their lives by threatening force against us if we attempt to get any closer. In the example I just offered, Bain and I were personally thanked by the man's family for pulling him away from the knife so that we did not have the need to use lethal force against him. That man lived to see another day because of Bain. I chose to tell you this story because you may not consider dogs as life-saving measures, but they truly are for us. They serve the community in more ways than you probably understand. On November 16, 2023, Bain was killed in the line of duty by a fleeing suspect in a sewer drain. Bain fearlessly charged into the tunnel to search for the suspect without hesitation and unfortunately succumbed to his injuries that day. The space that Bain was sent into would have been incredibly dangerous for deputies and officers to enter. The tunnel was only 3 feet wide, and for us to be able to search it would have required us to crawl on our bellies for approximately 250 to 300 feet in a very tight, confined space, which would have left us vulnerable to a lethal force encounter with no assistance available to us. Although losing Bain was very difficult for me personally, it was even more difficult for my kids. That afternoon when I returned home, I had to sit down with my kids and explain to them that Bain was not coming home that day. I have several photos and mementos of Bain in my house now to remember him after the outpouring of generosity and compassion from the community following his passing. Both of my sons see these items daily and frequently say, "I wish Bain was still here." They're not alone in that. I also wish that Bain was still here. In closing, I hope I've conveyed to you just how important these dogs are to law enforcement and the community, and just how much they mean to us as handlers. It is my opinion that the current sentencing guidelines for killing or seriously injuring a police animal are not significant enough for the damage that losing one of these amazing animals causes. I ask that you consider Bain's Law and amend the sentencing to prevent this awful act from occurring again. Thank you for allowing my testimony today. I'll be pleased to answer any questions you have going forward. And I didn't mention, but that is Bain over there in the corner.
It's exactly what I was going to point out. Thank you, Deputy. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
All right, our last conferee is Sergeant Ryan Sumner from the Lenexa Police Department. Sergeant, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman Owens and committee members, for having me here to talk today. Like you said, I'm Ryan Sumner. I'm here on behalf of Kansas Police Officers Association. I gotta bring these down a little bit. You guys are all blurry with my readers on. Otherwise, I can't read the paper. We're here in support of House Bill 2583, a bill that would increase criminal penalties and fines when harming certain police dogs, and we're adding horses to that as well for mounted patrol. A little background on me. I've been employed with the city of Lenexa for 20 years. I was a canine handler for 16 years. I worked 3 different police dogs, dual purpose dogs. They search for narcotics and people, bad and good. I am the NPCA, National Police Canine Association Regional Director. I've certified approximately 1,000 dogs and trained over 30 to 40 green dogs as my time as a nationally certified trainer as well. I've immersed myself into this canine lifestyle over the last, I'd say 17, 18 years since I started decoying early as a police officer. And by no means, I'm not remotely the most interesting part of this bill, the service animals are, so I want to kind of get into that. Easily, these service animals are one of the most important tools an agency can obtain. We use them for a number of different reasons: narcotics, patrol, criminal apprehension type stuff, explosives. Their noses, hearing, night vision, speed, and I can go on and on, are superior to humans, and we use those to our advantages. They're courageous, loyal, and do all the above tasks mentioned for just a little bit of praise. Pat on the head, good boy, good girl, whatever that dog may be. That's the only reason they do it, just for praise from mom or dad, whoever their handler is. They save citizens and police officers' lives daily when searching for suspects that committed violent crimes that may be running your neighborhood or a missing elder, missing child that need to be found because it's too cold outside. I want everybody to know the true importance and just tell a quick few stories, just stories that these guys have as well behind me. My dogs have found missing elderly people probably about 5 years before my second dog retired. He found a subject in a frozen creek, had some mental disabilities, elderly, decided to commit suicide. His body temperature got down to about 85 degrees, and the dog found him in the creek, and we were able to save his life because of that. My dog found a subject that shot at Shawnee, Kansas police officers in a horse trailer, bit him, brought him out of the trailer. The gun was in the trailer, which solved another shooting in Kansas City, Kansas, where he shot a guy because the gun came back with NIBIN's records and hits for that shooting, and that family was able to identify him. I got so many stories like this over the years where my dogs apprehended bad people and also found people that need to be found and saved their lives. Not to mention the countless fines of narcotics fines and the war on drugs that these dogs do. If you think about it, you know, a lot of you probably take your families to the Chiefs games, KC Sporting, Royal Stadium. All those stadiums are swept by bomb dogs before your families go in and make sure there's no explosive devices. You know, there's just so many things that these dogs do. I've spoken to these handlers after their dogs have been disabled or worse, killed in the line of duty, and you almost get a sense of survivor guilt with these handlers that lose their dogs. Should I send them on it? Should I have done that? You know, could I have done this and this would have happened? They go through severe grief when this happens. Not to mention, you know, the citizens of that city, that county go through a lot of grief, the police officers, everybody wears this. And like the officer that was just up here talking said, and I've seen this, they got to go home and tell their families. A lot of these guys have kids, a lot of these girls have kids, and got to go tell their families who adore these dogs. Talk a little bit about the financial side of this. When a service dog is killed or disabled, it's not just a quick turnaround. If a department with all the resources and if they're king for the day and should just go get a dog right away, and you got to remember too, that handler doesn't always want to jump right back into another dog, and sometimes that handler doesn't get into another dog because of the grief that he has with losing that dog. But let's say they're going to get a dog right away. Not everybody has the resources like some of the police departments that have certified trainers and stuff like that. They have to send them to vendors to get their dogs trained. Kansas does not have a whole lot of vendors, so a lot of us go outside the state of Kansas to get our dogs. And you're looking at about $18,000 to $18,500 just to buy a dog and go through a canine academy at one of these vendors. And I want you to remember that cost too, just kind of bookmark that a little bit. Because I'll talk about it again when we talk about the proposed change. This does not include the per diem that the department's got to pay that they already paid for the other dog. This doesn't include the lodging. This doesn't include the fact that this handler is going to be away from his family for 10 to 12 weeks. You know, there's a lot that goes into it. And not to mention the department's without that dog. The citizens are without that dog. The officers are without that dog for, you know, however long. And even if you train that dog to the basic training, which is usually the standard after the basic academy, the dog is going to be nowhere close to where that dog that passed away or disabled was. It's no different than any of us. Our first year at our job, we weren't great at it, but 10 years in, we start getting pretty good. These dogs are like that about 3 to 4 years in. They're good, and then when you get that new dog, it's going to take 3 or 4 years till that dog's up to par to where that last dog was.
Sergeant Summer, if I could interrupt you real quick, our speaker has another meeting that he has to get to, and I know he'd like to say a few words, so I'll let you finish in just 1 second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right ahead, Speaker Hawkins.
Chairman Owens, Vice Chair Smith, Ranking Member Carmichael, and committee, it's truly an honor for me to be here today to witness this testimony. You know, a canine dog, a canine partner is a partner. These people put their lives on the line, and these service animals put their lives on the line, and it truly becomes a family. And so when this happened, I wanted to respond just as quick as I could, and I called the chairman and said, hey, I want to do this, and ask for his help. But actually, I want to let everybody know that my legislative liaison, Logan Patrick, actually did a lot of the work. He did a lot of the research across the nation of what kind of laws were out there, along with, of course, John Penninger, and we got the bill put together, and I think it's a really good bill, and I can't wait to see it on the floor just as quick as we can get it there. And I appreciate everything that the Corrections Committee does. You guys do a lot of work during a session, and I really appreciate all the work you do for the state of Kansas, and I appreciate everything each of our law enforcement does in serving our community. So thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing forth this issue to where we can solve it. Thank you, Chairman.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All right, Sergeant Summer, feel free to continue on. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no, not a problem. So I told you guys the book marked that $18,000. The old statute covered a maximum of $5,000 for a dog. Not everybody has the resources of the Lenexa Police Department or Sedgwick County or Wichita PD. I certify and train a lot of smaller agencies as well that raise money to purchase their police dogs from businesses. There's veterinarians that donate food. If they lose a dog, I mean, it's not going to be 5 months. That's why I said if you were king for a day, it'd be 5 months. But realistically, they probably aren't going to see another dog for a year or more till they can raise enough money, budget for it, all that kind of stuff. So that agency, you know, a smaller agency may not have any dog and start having to use outside dogs if they have them. So I think it's important that we support this bill. The criminals that kill or disable these dogs are mostly going to be violent criminals and committed a crime that rose to the seriousness of a canine deployment. That's going to meet Graham versus Connor. These are dangerous people. There's going to be other crimes other than injuring this police dog. It is our belief that passage of this bill will hold those that decide to kill or disable a working canine or horse more accountable than the current Kansas statute. Passage of this bill will also assist agencies and associations in recovering some of the costs so that they can procure another canine. With that, I'll stand for questions when appropriate.
Very good. Thank you, Sergeant. I believe that's all the proponents we have listed. Was there anybody else that wished to speak as a proponent? All right, seeing none. Committee. Questions? Representative Slingsweep.
Why does the bill only ask for 10,000? I mean, you know, it's no secret I've been a law enforcement chaplain for almost 24 years now, and the training of these dogs is absolutely crucial. And it's crucial because mistakes happen if they're not well trained, as you know. And it's extremely expensive to do this. Some of you get dogs from Belgium probably still, right? I mean, Malinois that often come from Europe, and the training is just to learn to kind of take over for those dogs. At least we've had that at the Topeka Police Department. Is very expensive, and $10,000 seems to me to not even get at the crux of the matter. So my question is simply this, to whomever wishes to answer it. Why is this so low in the bill? And is it because it's impossible to retrieve anything in a higher amount? Just curious what the reasoning is.
Certainly, and Natalie can explain this if I don't explain it correctly, but the fine is 10,000. The restitution can be whatever amount that the judge sets it at. So that 10,000.
That's where I was going with that. Thank you.
Financial penalty.
Clarification.
Natalie's going to clarify even further.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that $10,000, it's actually just a minimum fine. Fines for these severity levels of felonies are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the court would be able to assess a fine. You know, it's just that the minimum fine would have to be $10,000. And then the restitution would be required to cover the veterinary expenses, the replacement.
And training?
Mm-hmm. What's that?
And the training costs? To replace?
Training isn't specifically mentioned. It just talks about, let me find the exact provision here. veterinary medical treatment, reasonable funeral and burial expenses, and replacement of the police dog. So, if you consider the training part of the replacement of the dog, but, that would be up to a court to interpret.
Certainly.
Is that enough? Do we need to put training in there?
That would be completely up to you.
How do I do this?
So what we need to do is, so we're having the hearing now. We'll ask our questions when we get ready to work the bill, which I believe is scheduled for next Tuesday.
Gotcha.
Feel free to work with Natalie to get an amendment drafted.
Thank you.
Certainly. Additional questions, committee? Representative Martinez and then Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when this law passes, would it apply retro to the case that's,
No, unfortunately.
no part of it? Even restitution?
Yeah, unless I'm incorrect, Natalie, but it would not be retroactive. That is correct. Unfortunately, we can't do that. Representative Carmichael.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's just a constitutional problem with passing retroactive laws. Otherwise, I would say a hard 50, and I'm not kidding. I know people think I'm too liberal on things as far as I'm concerned. People who mess with police dogs, lock them up, throw away the key. But maybe I can learn a little bit here. Could one of you kind of explain to me what dogs are cross-trained in? Because, I see a bomb dog, for example, occasionally, only very occasionally, in this capital. And I think that dog has perhaps different training, that one that's trained in apprehensions versus one that's trained with drug interdiction recognition, a dog that's a tracking dog. Can somebody just kind of educate me a little bit more about the types of things these dogs do, and whether it's just, is every dog trained to do everything, or how does that work, so I know more about this process?
Yes, sir, Representative Carmichael. So our dogs are trained to meet the needs of each department. So my department currently doesn't have a need for an explosive detection dog at the moment. If we did, we would begin training the dog to only detect explosive odors. For legal reasons, we don't cross-train dogs to detect both the explosive odors and drug odors, because we use them for two different sides. One's for public safety of airports and things like that. The other one is for a warrant exception on vehicles during traffic stops and search warrants and things like that. As far as patrol functions and detection functions, you are able to train a dog to be both a tracking and apprehension dog and evidence, and also train them for explosive detection or drug detection. They can do both facets at once, or they can just do one or the other. We train the dogs to just detect whatever we need our department, or whatever need we have for our department at that time. Did I answer your question fully?
I think so. There's also dogs, I think, used by the fire service in arson detection, and they have a different skill set than a dog who knows how to sniff for drugs, for example.
Yes, sir. The same would apply to them. I don't know what odors the arson dogs are trained to detect, but that's a different realm that we don't delve into very often. Our primary function would be the explosive detection dogs and the patrol dogs that meet the law enforcement needs.
I can tell you, I've seen those arson dogs work at fire scenes. It's amazing what they can do. It really is something to see. Mr. Chair, thank you, Deputy. With your permission, I did want to ask one additional question of the reviser. I was a little late, and I do apologize for everyone, for no disrespect intended. The assistance dogs are listed in here along with the statute number, and I didn't have a chance to look up what those assistant dogs are. For example, page 1, line 30, and then at some point there's a statutory definition of what assistance dog, page 2, line 23, KSA 39-1113.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so KSA 391113 does define assistance dog. It's defined as any guide dog, hearing assistance dog, or service dog. And the three of those types of dogs are also defined in this statute, if you want me to, do you want me to read
Now,
it?
that's what I needed to know, and really no disrespect to disability community, and I love all dogs, but I'm not sure that these two bills fit. If we need to take care of assistance dogs, I'm not sure that it really belongs in a law enforcement dog statute. Just something to be thinking about there. Maybe they need their own protections, but I really feel like attacking a law enforcement dog is serious, because the next time it'll be the police officer, and the next time it'll be a child. And so I'm not sure these fit. Thank you.
Further questions, committee? Representative Mon.
Mr. Chairman, this is kind of more of a procedural question. I know I've been here 1 year, but I'm still a freshman, so I'm still trying to figure it out. Is there a procedural mechanism just to move directly to final action today?
There certainly is. If I remember correct, in the Rules Committee, does that take a waive? I'd have to, give me a second, I can look that up, but there is a mechanism to do so.
Yeah, it seems to me that we have, just reading the room, that we have pretty much consensus on this bill. There may be some small amendments that some people want to make, but given how busy the calendar is, I thought, if we're all in agreement, let's get it done, sooner than later. But I'll leave that up to the chair.
Just give the chairman just 1 second so that I can look up what that specific rule is to make sure that we are in compliance if we choose to do that. So just give me 1 second here. All right. Well, then with that in mind, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't in violation of any of our specific rules. Typically, we do wait until the next day, but Representative Mon did make the suggestion we move directly into working this bill. Is there any objection by any members of the committee to doing so? Representative Titus objects, or do you have a question? All right. So without unanimous consent, we will hold off on moving straight to working it, but we will plan on working it on Monday, or excuse me, probably, I believe we have it scheduled for Tuesday. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I, just to make a comment to clarify, I fully support the bill. I don't think we're at a point in the session where we need to rush. Let's get the amendments correct, let's see them all on paper, and let's send a quality product over to the Senate.
Understood. Very good. Are there further questions for the proponents? Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize because this will be probably a question more for the reviser. I'm familiar with January 12th this year, we had a K-9 that was injured on I-70. A trooper was, I'm not exactly sure of the circumstances exactly, but there was a trooper that was parked on I-70. The road was closed. They were diverting traffic off the interstate. I'm not sure if it was a distracted driver or what the situation, but the car was struck. There was a K-9 inside that was injured. Is this bill applicable to even accidental injury or death? How would this apply to that type of situation where it wasn't necessarily an intentional act.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Smith, the definition of the crime is not something that you're actually proposing to change here. And so you'll see it basically starting at line 12 on page 1. So it's knowingly and without lawful cause or justification, poisoning, inflicting great bodily harm, permanent disability, or death upon a police dog. So it doesn't require intentional conduct. It does require knowing conduct. So, that's going to be a question for the trier of fact whenever that comes into question.
Okay, thank you. I was looking farther down on the bill. If I would have just read the first part there a little bit better, I would have found that knowingly was the word I was looking for.
No problem. Additional questions or comments, committee? All right, seeing none. We see no neutral or opponent testimony here today. So with that in mind, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2583. And I'd personally like to thank each one of you that took the time to be here. I know that I generally speak for the committee when it comes to say that we really appreciate our men and women of law enforcement and certainly appreciate the animals that are willing to give up their lives also in the line of duty. So thank you all. All right, committee will now move to the hearing on House Bill 2601, and we will ask Natalie to give us an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2601 requires certain persons to participate in a multidisciplinary model of service for substance use disorders on a third or subsequent conviction of driving under the influence. The bill amends KSA 81567. That's the statute that provides the criminal penalties for driving under the influence. For a person convicted of a third violation when they have a prior conviction within the immediately preceding 10 years, or a person who is convicted of a fourth or subsequent violation of DUI, if that person is granted probation, then the court is required to determine whether the person shall be supervised by community corrections or court services based on a risk and needs assessment that's specified by the Kansas Sentencing Commission. And during that probation term, the person shall be required to participate in a multidisciplinary model of services for substance use disorders facilitated by the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services designated care coordination agency. That person would be assessed and, if appropriate, referred to community-based substance use disorder treatment. The multidisciplinary team would include the designated care coordination agency, the person's probation supervision officer, the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services designated treatment provider, and the person who is serving the probation term. And I can take any questions.
Committee, any questions for Natalie? Seeing none, thank you very much. All right, we have a couple of proponents listed. First, we have Kevin Waring, Legislative Chair on behalf of Kansas Association of Court Services Officers, I believe is on WebEx with us.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Owens and committee members for allowing me to testify today in support of House Bill 2601. My name is Kevin Waring. I'm the Chief Court Services Officer in the 10th Judicial District. Today, I'm testifying as the legislative chair for the Kansas Association of Court Services Officers. Our association, KAXO, is in support of the changes contained in House Bill 2601, requiring persons convicted of third or subsequent DUIs to participate in that multidisciplinary care coordination for treatment. Court services officers have been supervising DUI cases for years as directed by the district courts. Prior to the change that came in, I believe, the 2022 legislative session with House Bill 2377, we operated with this multidisciplinary approach on these multi-offender, multi-time DUI offenders. We are hoping that with favorable passage of House Bill 2601, we can continue on with that work. Certainly, supervising DUI offenders is important work. helping to ensure the public safety is there, and then also supporting that person to complete their sentence and hopefully not return to the criminal justice system. In my written testimony, I provided some statistical information from KDADS, from their tracking of the multidisciplinary treatment approach. I believe highlighting specifically a low return of these offenders that have completed that program. We are hopeful, CACSO is hopeful, that if with the passage of House Bill 2601, we can continue coordinating with that multidisciplinary approach, our CSOs, working with the treatment providers to provide adequate support to these individuals to address their convictions and to make them productive back in the community. In addition to what is currently contained in House Bill 2601, CACSO does have a couple considerations that I included in my written testimony. I'll highlight those briefly here. The first was to address the funding. Previously, these multi-time DUI offenders, the funding was provided for them. We are hopeful that that continues. Perhaps that's contained elsewhere in another statute that I did not see, but we are hopeful that we can continue with the funding being provided for these. The second point of possible clarification is the period of funding. With that 2022 legislative change, it put these felony DUIs back on the grid, which gave them a standard probation term of 24 months. Just a point of clarification, if the treatment providers feel like treatment is needed for up to 24 months or past, I suppose, a traditional 12-month supervision, is the funding going to be there to continue this multidisciplinary approach for these persons who may need it longer than 12 months? Additionally, cleaning up the language. Excuse me. Was there a question? I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
Oh, no. The third topic there was cleaning up language that's in the statute regarding the statement of the remainder of the supervision period. I think that's a technical fix that we're maybe looking at having. Again, it has to deal with these DUI offenses being put back on the grid and no longer being considered post-imprisonment supervision. So my third and fourth points on our written testimony is dealing with that. The fourth is specifically about extending these DUI offenders if they need an extension of supervision. I believe that would be dealt with a grid felony extension, but there's a specific statute outlining how to do that. So I think that that language could be perhaps amended in what is currently in 18-1567, the DUI code. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to provide written testimony. And again, the WebEx testimony today on behalf of CACSO, and I'm happy to stand for any questions the chairman or the committee may have.
Certainly, committee questions for Mr. Waring. Not seeing any right now. Thank you very much, sir. We'll now be pleased to hear from Steve Denny, Public Policy Chair, Kansas Association of Addiction Professionals. Steve, welcome to the committee. Can you turn your microphone on for us?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, members of the committee and chairman. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Steve Denny. I serve as Deputy Director at Fort County Mental Health Center. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed clinical addiction counselor. I also serve as the Public Policy Chair for the Kansas Association of Addiction Professionals, or CAP. I've worked at Fort County since 2005 and have worked in the field of behavioral health since 2002. We are a certified community behavioral health clinic and a licensed substance use disorder treatment under the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services. We serve 5 counties: Montgomery, Cowley, Wilson, Chautauqua, and Elk in southeast Kansas. I'm here in support of House Bill 2601, which would amend KSA 8-1567. It would establish a requirement of clinical intervention for individuals convicted of a third or subsequent DUI offense. This bill inserts language that requires the multidisciplinary treatment team, or the MDT team, and that would include care coordination, treatment services, supervision from corrections, and the individual involved. We have been providing at 4 County services under the MDT model since 2007. We receive referrals through the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas, otherwise known as SAC in Wichita. Once they're referred, they're enrolled in treatment services, which includes individual and group counseling, case management, peer services, and co-occurring mental health treatment services when clinically indicated. We continue to correspond with SAC throughout the monthly reports and updates throughout the duration of the treatment episode. Most of these episodes last around 1 year. I look back over the last couple years of referrals. We have had 17 since 2021, which isn't a large number, but we're a rural provider, keeping that in mind. Of those 17, 76% were discharged successfully and had 0 arrests in the 30 days prior to discharging from services. Only one of these individuals required to enter the program again due to another arrest. I would also encourage you to turn attention to the written testimony submitted by Jason Hess from Heartland, RADAC, or the Regional Alcohol and Drug Assessment Center. He has some statewide data that is very similar to the numbers I just provided. In conclusion, I'd just like to say that I believe that behavioral health is essential to the wellness of our community. I believe this program helps keeps our community safer and reduces the burden on the legal system. I fully support the bill, and I do appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Denny? Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of this idea. Really makes good sense to me. Could you tell me, though, roughly how much do these programs cost? Who pays for them? How do we finance them for people who are indigent? Can you help me with some of those concepts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would estimate, and I don't have exact numbers, but best guess an average cost for reimbursement of one of these episodes would be anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 per individual. Could be more, could be less, depending on their level of need and the amount of services it requires. The way it used to work under the previous model is they would be referred by the RADAC or the assessment center, and there was a special pool of funding that we used to call Senate Bill 6 that funded the treatment episode for usually right around 1 year or until they were discharged. And it was reimbursed through and managed by KDADs through their MCO or managed care organization. They managed those funds and approved the services, and we had to submit claims for those services and have them approved just like any other medical service.
But when you say it used to be, that implies that it is no more that way?
Yeah, the history is a bit confusing to me, and I'll defer to the reviser on this, but I believe when the statute was updated, the method for reimbursing for those services was removed, which is one of the reasons we are here today.
All right, so then help me under this bill. How does it get paid for?
I believe that's why the additional fiscal request was added to this bill. It's my understanding.
Maybe there's someone else who's going to testify, could give me a better answer to those questions, or maybe somebody else could help me. I'm just trying to figure out who pays for it, because I know sometimes people who have multiple DUI arrests have a lot of other problems in life too, and I don't know exactly how they pay for this. That's my concern.
And Natalie can probably help with this, but last year or the year before, when we redid a number of the DUI statutes, we, in essence, whether intentionally or unintentionally, I believe it was unintentional, eliminated the ability for this SB6 and for this treatment after a third or subsequent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that. I don't think anybody else remembers that, but I believe that it was unintentional that was taken out as part of kind of that entire reform, and that's what this attempts to fix. I was just pulling up the fiscal note, and basically the fiscal note says that there's They're just unable to determine what that cost would be at this time, but chances are we could find some historical data on SB 6.
Well, I'm trying, and I don't mean to belabor this, but I'm trying to figure out, so if this bill passes, who pays for this treatment? The taxpayer, the violator, some other fund?
Well, I would have to go back and review the SB 6 funding as to how that was actually created and what that mechanism was. It was indicated that it went through KDAD's budgets through the MCO process. But my presumption would be similar to our SB 123, where it is funded and paid for treatment services.
That's correct. But paid for by the taxpayer or by the person who is undergoing the treatment or some other source?
Well, as I understand, that's the taxpayer. That's how SB 123 is funded directly out of the state general fund.
Before we work this bill, I would hope that our staff, be it research and or the reviser, could make sure we know what we're doing this time around.
Certainly.
I just want to make sure I understand who's footing the bill.
Absolutely. Representative Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when we go from fourth and subsequent to third and subsequent, how many more people are we going to be putting through the multidisciplinary rehab program?
Once again, it was my understanding is that previously, the way we did it before, it was third and subsequent. So we had third and fourth that were in the same pool. So I don't see many, if any, additional individuals that we'd be treating.
Thank you. I guess I misunderstood that. I thought previously it was fourth and subsequent. So.
Further questions, committee? All right, thank you very much. We'll now be pleased to hear from Stuart Little on behalf of the Behavioral Health Sciences Association. And if I know Stuart, he has all of the answers.
Oh, no.
Questions that we have.
You've already jinxed me, Mr. Chairman. Stuart Little, Behavioral Health Association. We're just here as a group of the treatment providers around the state who, some of them are participating in this program. And just to kind of reiterate, this seems to be something that was unintentional that we've come back to address and get that back in. My understanding is that the fall off, and to your question, Representative Mong, was that it was noticeable, but it wasn't significant. And if this just sets us back to that status of prior to making this change, it kind of is a reset. I think the issue with regard to funding, I know there's KDAD's testimony in here. Haven't looked at it yet, but that may have some means of addressing that, or at the very least be able to get you an answer before you decide to work the bill. We're supportive of the legislation. It furthers the policies that we're interested in, which are getting people into treatment. So happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Stuart. Any questions for Stuart? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. There is about 5 additional pieces of written-only proponent testimony, which I would encourage you guys to take a look at and read. I see no neutral or opponent testimony. Is there any neutral or opponent testimony? All right, seeing none. Jillian, if I could ask you to research that and see if we can't understand how it was previously, what that change was, and how this attempts to correct it, that would be helpful. Oh, yep.
Lee Keck with the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services. We can coordinate with you, but I've already got people back in the office working on a write-up on this for you all. But my understanding is how it previously worked was from fees from court services. There's a certain fee fund that gets split between Department of Aging and Disability Services and also the Department of Corrections. So not general taxpayer funds, specifically court fee funds is where this would come from, but we will get you more detailed information before next Tuesday.
Thank you very much. All right, committee, anything else as it relates to 2601? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on 2601. As you guys are aware, we do not have committee tomorrow, but we do on Monday. Monday will be the last day to request any bill introductions that are still outstanding. So I look forward to seeing you all on Monday and encourage you to have a great weekend. Thank you.